Hi everyone! I decided to focus on international students for this project. I don't have any experience working with this subpopulation, so I thought it was a great opportunity to learn more about ways to ensure their success here in America. So these are the most recent demographics from the 2019 to 2020 school year. 1.1 million international students enrolled in higher education institutions across America, accounting for about 6% of all students enrolled. The top three US host states were California, New York, and Texas. Since 2005, almost 70% of international students came from Asia, and the top origin countries include India, China, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Canada. So, why are international students so important to higher education institutions? Well, first, financial and economic factors are at play. Enrollments contribute to institutions' revenue and the local economy as they become consumers. They also help fulfill the labor market within the immediate area as their college or university, usually if they are successful in obtaining a visa post graduation. Socially, they bring global perspectives, and this raises cultural awareness and appreciation within and also outside of the institution. I also wanted to point out a unique challenge when it comes to retaining international students. So they're fully self-funded and they pay out of pocket, so they have full freedom to transfer to another institution if their current institution doesn't meet their needs. So it's really important for student affairs professionals and higher education professionals in general to make the institutional environment as welcoming as possible. So I wanted to do a deeper dive by looking at the unique challenges that international students face while attending higher education institutions. The first would be xenophobia. So there is always a trend of declining international enrollments, and this is reflective of global political tensions. So after the 9/11 tragedy, the recovery of international enrollments took 10 years. And this trend is evident not just after the 9/11 tragedy, but it was also seen after the 2016 presidential election, as well as more recently, the coronavirus of 2020. The 2020 survey of 599 higher education institutions indicated that 88% of them anticipated a decrease in international student enrollments, with 30% of them anticipating a substantial decrease. And a 2021 survey conducted by American Council on Education stated an unwelcoming message. So participants, quote, feared international students might have motives in coming here beyond earning a degree to steal American innovation and intellectual property, end quote, with the largest suspicion among international Chinese students. This results in feelings of fear, anxiety, and recurring collective trauma. The next is racism. So many international students come from monoculture societies. So the sudden switch of identity status and becoming a minority can be shocking and painful for them to cope with. In Western countries, there are non-white international students that face exclusion, while white international students are included solely based on phenotype. So as a result, international students question their racial identities in the context of social group belonging, which, quote, conflicts or changes how they see themselves for the very first time, end quote. Another unique challenge has to deal with tightened immigration and delayed visa process. So historically, the US government sends unwelcome messages around the world by tightening their immigration policies. So, for example, after the 9/11 tragedy, a mandatory visa interview process was added, which caused delays for as long as 12 weeks. And this resulted in decline of 14,000 international student enrollments in the first year alone. And they also implemented a policy that required strict background checks using a system called Visas Mantis, which were conducted on students attempting to study any of the 200 scientific fields. So interestingly, top 3 fields of study among international students include STEM, which involve engineering, math, and computer science, and these majors account for more than half of all international enrollment fields. Currently, only 40% of U.S. consulate offices are open worldwide due to the pandemic, with many of the offices in China and India remaining closed with the heightened number of cases. And the U.S. Homeland Security in 2020 reported a 72% decline of new student visa holders, which is huge. International students might also experience what many researchers refer to as academic culture shock. So a lot of them have to pass the TOEFL or the IELTS exams to become admitted into a U.S. higher ed institution. But even after they pass these exams and they get admitted, they continue to face academic hurdles. And research shows students still struggle to understand lectures, academic content, writing reports, and presenting ideas. Westernized student-centric learning philosophy encourages independent critical thinking with little to no guidance, whereas Eastern teacher-centric learning, which are mainly found in Far East Asian cultures, involves more note-taking and rote memorization. So this is completely different from either of these teaching philosophies, and they may experience some challenges. So now that we've learned some of the unique challenges that international students face at U.S. higher education institutions, let's talk about how we can ensure their success, both academically and socially. So the first is academic advisement and mentorship. So with the increase in frequency of developmental advising, it also improves international students' retention, academic performance, satisfaction, sense of belonging, and decreased stress. Many institutions release guidance handbooks on best practices in assisting international students. Another approach is to form a more inclusive curriculum and pedagogy. So Scott and Chen found that they were heavily limited in socialization due to the amount of time they dedicated to completing their coursework, and this isolation caused substantial stress. The Institute of International Education also found that first-year international students spent between 11 to 20 hours a week, compared to 88% of first-year domestic U.S. students reporting spending less than 10 hours a week on their coursework. Also, as research has shown time and time again, student engagement and student involvement is linked to feelings of belonging among college students. So student engagement is another factor when it comes to ensuring their success. So there was a study at Indiana University Center for Post-Secondary Research and Learning. It involved almost 3,000 undergrad international students and 67,000 domestic U.S. students in 317 four-year institutions to study international student engagement compared to domestic U.S. student engagement. And findings show that international students tend to be more engaged in activities that were educationally purposeful during their first year of college, and students reported a greater sense of both academic and social development. These are some of the well-known organizations and agencies that support international higher education. So first, there is NAFSA, or known as Association of International Educators. This is the world's largest nonprofit organization dedicated to international education and exchange studies. The next is Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, also known as HEA. This is a U.S. governmental agency which encourages international education and oversees exchange programs such as the Fulbright program, Humphrey, and English language programs. Lastly, there is the International and Foreign Language Education, which is actually an office within the U.S. Department of Education, and they are dedicated to strengthening foreign language instruction, international studies, and research. So in conclusion, these are some highlights from my presentation. International students are highly valuable to higher education institutions. They bring with them multicultural perspectives and cultural awareness. International students experience many psychological and emotional challenges as they learn to adapt, many of which go undetected. It is really important for higher education institutions and their leaders to make them feel welcomed and included. And it's also important to read up on up-to-date research and studies on how to better assist international students, along with how all of these emerging technologies can assist students and faculty better within the classroom. And this should really be at the forefront. Lastly, as I mentioned before, international students are self-funded, so this is a factor that is really important for higher education institutions to keep in mind when they are looking at retention rates and how to improve those retention rates among international students. I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. I'm very much looking forward to your thoughts and feedback. Thanks.